Hi there, and welcome to the HR Podcast. This is Linda Misegadis
and Cyndi Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. I'm excited to be here with my co-host, Cyndi Manuel. How are you today?
I am doing really well and super excited about our guest today.
Me too. I am very excited. I know you've been talking about her for a little bit, and so it's very exciting to have a chance to meet Andrea today too. So we're super excited for that. Well, we're going to be talking today about HR themes, and so Cyndi, I'm going to pass it over to you to introduce Andrea.
Awesome. Well, we are thrilled to have you on today, Andrea. When about 3 years ago, my very first podcast that I was on ever was on Andrea's podcast. She had reached out to me through LinkedIn and said,
cool.
Hey, my dad does change management, and I would love to have someone come on my show, on my podcast, and kind of share a bit more about change management. And I thought, I'm terrified and excited all at the same time. So just
and
a
now
little.
Look, now you're hosting. Now you're hosting.
Isn't
your
that
own
crazy?
Podcast.
3 years later,
crazy.
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment. We get to have Andrea on our podcast, so I'm super excited. But just want to share a little bit more about you, Andrea, and then I want to turn it over to you to fill in the blanks. And so Andrea is an HR business partner. She's a leader. She's a consultant. And as an HR expert, she's also a YouTube host and an all-around organizational whiz. She has over 15 years of experience as an HR business partner, leader, and consultant, and brings respect to the workplace. I love that. As a consultant and owner of the HR Hub, and we're going to put all the links and all the goodies in our show notes. She has worked with not-for-profits, public sectors, and everything in between, hoping to create workplaces where businesses work, employees thrive, together drive business value. And together drive business value. Andrea also runs Canada's top YouTube channel, where she covers everything related to HR, which is a big reason why you're here today.
Absolutely.
From the basics to thought leadership to soft skills. So again, we're just so happy to have you on today, Andrea, and please fill in any blanks of anything that I may have missed in your wonderfulness. Please share with us.
Well, I would say it's the top HR YouTube channel, as far as I can tell. They're actually kind of hard to find when you're searching for them, but as far as I know, it is, it's the top HR YouTube channel.
Yay!
I think you just embrace it. It is the top YouTube channel. So
of all time.
I think you're right.
We said it here, so it has to be true.
That must be the case.
There's some truth to that, isn't there? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like facts. I like to back up all my statements with facts. So yeah, but as far as I've looked, as far as I know, I am the biggest one in Canada.
That's amazing.
So I just hit 7,000. I'm closing in on.
Wow, that's amazing. Something to aspire to. Linda.
Josh Burson only has 10,000.
Oh, well, see, you're just, you're closing in on it for sure. Congratulations. What a great accomplishment. Thanks. Plus, we love seeing the elevation of female voices in this space because Cyndi and I talk about this all the time, that this is a female-dominated field, has been since the beginning of human resources, if you trace it all the way back, and yet the strongest voices in the industry are male voices. And so we love to see our females out there and their voices raised and really kind of being able to share that. So congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I see another related stat from, men in the HR profession get paid so much more than women, and there's just so much more women. I mean, anyway, there's also lots of things to be hopeful about. And so, we're here doing this, and women have more power today than they might have had in history, as a population. Yes. So we are making progress.
We are for sure. I totally agree. Why human resources? Like, why did you get into human resources?
Well, Cyndi might know because she talked about my dad. My dad was in HR, and he ran his own consultancy when I was a kid. And so he would pull all of us into being employees now and then, and, reviewing his collective agreement and doing his filing. And when we got older, maybe even doing some typing and things like this. And I thought it was interesting. It was interesting, and, it involved people, and, certainly at times it was even exciting. And so that's really where it started. And I went and did my degree and got some great jobs and then have continued to do lots of interesting things. And certainly there's a lot of opportunity in it too.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what was it that made you decide, gosh, I should do a podcast or a YouTube channel on HR and call it the HR Hub?
Well, actually, when I started, it was HR Shop Talk. So when you came on, it was HR Shop Talk.
I remember, yes.
The HR Hub with a rebrand came, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. So it got started summer of 2020, I think. And really it got started because my husband has started so many YouTube channels. He's on to his third now at least. He's had podcasts, and so that was just a feature of our discussion all the time at home. And then during the summer 2020, we were driving around, and I'm like, I could do an HR channel. That's something I can do. And do you guys ever get those ideas? I'm not sure if other people do, but those ideas where you're like, that is such a good idea. Like, you just know that that's the idea.
Yeah.
And I knew that was just for me, that was a great idea, that was something I could do. I knew I could do it's a grind sometimes where you just keep having to put out episode after episode, despite it not, the growth of your channel or however you're measuring your success, not meeting your expectations. You have to push through that. And I knew I could do that. I also knew how much I like talking to people. And
that's the best.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I knew that was something that I could do. Plus, I have an in-house expert, like literally in-house expert.
He knows how to do the behind the scenes, which is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes that's the most challenging part of it, right? Is the behind the scenes, learning all the ins and outs of it. So having someone who has that expertise to balance out what you're bringing, that's incredible.
Yeah. He also has all the supplies.
That helps too.
Very helpful. This is why we love our podcast, our producer, Logan, because we were just talking about beforehand, like he makes us look good and sound good. And so Linda and I just have these wonderful conversations with people like you, Andrea. And so it just makes it's lovely. Yeah. It's been a great journey for us too. And so it sounds like your podcast has evolved over the years. Can you kind of share a little bit more about that? And how do you choose the HR folks that you bring onto your podcast?
Yeah, it has evolved. Beyond the name, it has evolved, and mostly, but actually, and surprisingly, in many ways, it hasn't evolved. That idea I had, the seed of the idea has stuck. The interview theme has stuck. Initially, I was doing 10-minute discussions, and I quickly discovered that 10 minutes wasn't enough time to get the depth that I was looking for. But I'm also mindful of my audience's time, so I do try and keep it down, and format, like YouTube, I think, is better suited to a shorter format. So I have really strived to keep it down to 25 minutes. So I went from 10 minutes initially, 25. That was an evolution. Another evolution was, initially I thought maybe I would I'd ask all the hard questions. But I quickly discovered that, investigative journalism is not really my style. And I'm not looking for investigative journalism anyway. I'm just looking for those deep insights that are going to help, me and my audience move forward in our HR career. So those are probably the two major evolutions. Otherwise, it's been incremental, just getting a little bit better at interviewing, I do all my own editing, so getting better at the editing and incorporating new pieces into my workflow when it makes sense.
That's awesome.
Make sure, Andrea, when you're talking, like as Cyndi was mentioning, like when you're thinking about your guests, and because really at its core, the topics of HR haven't necessarily changed, but the impact and how we're addressing those things, I think, have changed. And so, at its heart, there hasn't been, while the role of HR has evolved, but a lot of what we're dealing with, it's the same thing. Like we even talk about programs, employee assistant programs have been around forever, but they keep kind of coming back around as things change, as things evolve. You start to see these common things coming back around. So how do you kind of address those and keeping it fresh? Because I think that's the other problem, is that a lot of times these things are like, oh, there's another podcast on this. So how do you kind of keep your themes fresh and your guests kind of, relevant to the topic?
Yeah. I don't know that I try to, I do. I try to address what's on people's minds. All of that. Yeah. And you can tell what's on people's mind by how some of the videos perform. So something that I'll talk about later is recognition, for example. I think recognition is so important, but it doesn't perform well. So I think recognition is something that isn't on people's mind. I'll argue later that it should be. But so I take some of my cues from my metrics. I'll take some cues from going to conferences. What do I see at conferences? I take some cues from what I see in publications and reading. And in many ways, I do what I feel like doing.
Yeah,
I do,
so
though.
That's the best way to do it sometimes, right?
What I'm interested in, I imagine that other people are also going to be interested in, but it's not just it. So we'll sometimes go and find guests based on a topic I'm interested in. Let's say, for example, I want to talk about ESG. ESG is something that HR is becoming more responsible for. So I need to go find someone who's credible who can talk about ESG. So I expect to do that sometime next early winter, late winter. How about that? So I'll look for somebody, but a lot of times I'll find somebody who's really smart, and I'll just talk about. They will determine what I talk about because they're just smart. They've got something about how they can talk about it. Cyndi's an example of going after. I wanted to talk about change management, so I went looking for someone who knew how to talk about change management. That's how I found Cyndi. And other people, they'll decide what we talk about.
I like that.
And I think if you're, and if you're enjoying the conversation, then your audience will as well, right? Because then it's not scripted; it's more conversational and things of that nature. So
I hope that is the case.
It has been. I've been following you. Yes.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. So you alluded to, you've got some themes. You have some things that have been hot topics. So let's go there. Like, what are some of the topics that you and themes that you have found to be very impactful? Because I think a lot of our audience, Linda, are HR business partners, HR leaders, and even just, you know, in any industry, these kind of topics, I'm sure, are very impactful. So what are those themes that you found, Andrea?
Yeah, I had to think about this. Because there are a number of themes that have come up throughout the channel, and you know, I want to distill it down to what I think would be useful. Some of these will come they won't be a surprise. They'll be completely like not a surprise. But other ones, maybe they will make your audience go, huh, right. But the first one that is not going to be a surprise is psychological safety. So that one is probably my number one theme since the beginning of the importance of psychological safety. Psychological safety is an underpinning of healthy teams, DEI, and more the inclusion and the belonging parts of DEI. You need psychological safety so that those qualities can flourish. And the power of psychological safety in problem solving, in innovation, it's just so important. That I've done episodes on psychological safety a couple of times. One that comes to mind was a conversation I had with Stephen Wiedner, and he talked about psychological safety, and I had to ask a question on behalf of my husband, because I think there's some resistance to psychological safety because it's, touchy-feely, right? HR is going to talk about feelings some more.
Oh, yeah.
And
so important,
some
though.
Workplaces, especially blue-collar ones, they will resist, but they'll resist more than others talking about feelings. And so I had to ask Stephen this question. I'm like, Stephen, do we, psychological safety, so now we have to make people feel safe. Do we really need to talk about feelings? And he called me out on that because, anyway, he called me out on it.
It is important.
And he said people have feelings and people are in our workforces. So yes, we have to talk about feelings. And I was just like, no.
There you have it. Yeah.
You cannot argue about that with that. But in the end, and many people out there will have heard of Google's Aristotle project, where they discovered, I think that's what it was called, where they analyzed a bunch of factors related to team performance and discovered that psychological safety was the most important in determining team performance. And teams that were had high psychological safety were likely to be rated by executives as twice as effective or more than twice as effective. I don't know that I said that well, but they would be rated highly by executives. So it's in the best interests of the team and of the leaders of those teams to foster psychological safety. And of course, it's in the best interests of the organization to foster psychological safety. So that easily is the number one.
Okay.
It's number one theme that has come out of 3.5 years of doing a YouTube channel. I think a theme that's come out as well, a second theme. And I wonder, I'll be interested in your guys' take on this, but another theme is trust. In HR, we don't have a lot of power. We have influence. And to have influence, you need trust. Yeah. You need your clients or the people you need you need action from them, they need to trust you. They need to trust that they're getting good advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 3 conversations with Ela Edgar about trust. And she co-hosts the podcast called Trust on Purpose with Charles Feltman. And she talks about 2 things. One, that you can be intentional about building trust. It's as simple as going to your client and saying, I want us to have a positive and effective working relationship. And we need trust. Trust important in doing that. I want to build trust with you. What would I have to do to increase your trust in me?
I love that. Just ask.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
I like
ask.
that. Mm-hmm.
Be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
I thought that was tremendous advice. And then when you think, but then she breaks it down further into 4 quadrants, which Charles Feltman talks about in his book. And 4 quadrants of trust. They're reliability, do what you say you're going to do, competent, be good at what you're doing, but you don't have to 100% know everything about everything. Sincerity, be sincere. And the most important one is caring. You have to care about the result and care about the person you're trying to help. And I think on those a lot, because a lot of us will depend on one of those quadrants. We'll care a lot, but that's not going to carry the day. Or we're really competent, but we're jerks. That also isn't going to build, maybe we're competent, but we have contempt for our clients. That is not going to build trust.
Right.
Yeah. And so you really do have to have all 4. And that is a theme that I've seen come up over and over again, more subtly than psychological safety. People will name psychological safety, but they'll talk about trust in kind of roundabout way. And they'll talk about relationship building, and it's always so much of that stuff comes back to building trust.
So true.
And to those 4 quadrants.
It really is.
It's something I am intentional about bringing into my consulting practice. So being specifically saying to clients, I care about, reducing your headaches, or you achieving your, enabling you to achieve your business goals. I care about those things. I care about you. So I'm quite intentional now after those, and so far so good. It certainly hasn't done me any harm.
Well, I think it's a really good point that you bring around that anyway, because those 2 are really aligned nicely, right? Because you can't have psychological safety if you don't have trust. And I think that oftentimes, I know I hear in organizations all the time, oh, well, we have a very trusting relationship within our leadership. And yet there are conversations that are happening outside of that leadership circle, right? So we trust each other, but not entirely, because I'm not going to be vulnerable enough to tell you how I really feel in this conversation. We'll have a sidebar conversation. That's not trust. I mean, if you have a truly trusting environment, then you're willing to have the vulnerability to speak openly and honestly with one another about all topics, and recognize that it may not be well. And that then is the true definition of where you feel psychologically safe, because most people probably won't say those things because they don't feel psychologically safe in that environment to say, I don't agree with you, Cyndi. This is what I think about this, or this. Most people don't. But then I might go outside and say, Andrea, can you believe that that's what Cyndi was talking about? I mean, I don't agree with her at all on that. Well, the time to have that conversation would have been with Cyndi in the room, right? So it's amazing how much those 2 go together, and yet we do talk about them separately. So it's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah. I had a really fascinating conversation in the last month or so with a guy who's developed a tool to actually build psychological safety in the workplace. It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
But so powerful. And so anyway, there are definitely ways we can be intentional about building trust and building psychological safety. And people out there know how to do it. And so we just have to go looking for that and be brave enough to try them.
Yeah. One more thing
Yeah.
related to both of those two is it takes intentionality, to your point, Andrea, and time, right? It's not something you can just say, hey, Linda, even back to what you were saying, Andrea, having that really honest conversation and saying, what will it take for us to build a trusting relationship? Even with that, it's not just going to happen. But by the same token, it'll take time and it'll take energy and intentionality, but it could be broken just like that. To your point, Linda, if you walk out and there's contempt at all, and there's sidebar conversations, that trust erodes quickly, much more quickly than it builds. And with it goes psychological safety. And boy, that message spreads like wildfire, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I know. And
Awesome.
you can, and when trust is broken, you're so right that it erodes faster than it builds. But you can rebuild it. If, by living in those 4 quadrants again, you can rebuild it. You can tackle it head on, and and all is not lost.
Yeah.
I love your hopeful.
I think that's a really good point.
I love how hopeful you are. I think that's great. I know there's a lot more work to be done when it is broken. So, yeah, but you're right. I totally agree. The Delta Principal is proud to sponsor the HR Her Resources podcast. If your organization is embarking on a digital transformation or navigating organizational change, the Delta Principal is here to support you. With over 17 years of expertise in organizational change management, we're eager to collaborate, educate, and partner with you to ensure a successful transformation. We now also offer personalized change management coaching and classes tailored for employees on navigating change and for leaders on effectively leading change. Please reach out to us by emailing info @thedeltaprincipal.com. And please follow us on LinkedIn. So what are some other themes that you have come across?
Another theme. Now, these aren't this isn't really future of HR kinds of things. These are just themes that have come out that come up over and over and over and over again on the channel. And the other one, and this is, I mentioned this at the beginning, is recognition.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't get it. Like, it's so powerful. Recognition is so powerful, and yet so few organizations do it. And those ones that, the ones you do hear that do it, few are doing it well. It's like, it's a checkbox activity. And yet sincere recognition can be so sincere recognition and recognition well done. And it isn't that hard. It's a really human process. It can be such an important tool in changing the culture. Maybe you want a culture that's more aware of safety. So you can start recognizing people for safety habits. Maybe you want more of innovation. So you can recognize people for innovative ideas at a meeting.
Right.
And yet, oh man, we're bad at it. We're bad at it. And I really think that HR needs to get their head wrapped around it, because it's such a powerful tool in doing all of the things that we want to do.
And you can't spread it like peanut butter. It can't be, I'm going to recognize Andrea and Linda in the same way, unless it's a team recognition. But, like you said, it has to be done well and sincerely. So if I know you like your recognition one-on-one. Linda might like it in a team meeting or whatever it happens to be. Or, I send a thank you card, a written thank you card to someone. That could be, recognition.
Yeah, but I don't also want people to get so caught up in trying to do it right that they don't do it at all.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's a really
That's
good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. One of my colleagues, Bob Lavinia, he speaks on employee engagement all the time. And part of it is that, here at the company I work for, UKG, we also have Great Place to Work. And Great Places to Work, Michael Bush, who's the CEO, is a big proponent of exactly what you were talking about there, which is around employee recognition, because there's a direct correlation between employee recognition and employee retention. When employees feel valued and they feel like they're important and their voices are being heard, it all kind of ties together, and that makes a big difference. And sometimes we get too caught up, to your point, in the method of recognition, or maybe we confuse recognition with things. So we think, oh, well, we provide you with great benefits, or, we bring lunch in every day or something like that. And that's not the same. Sometimes it is just that simple thank you and acknowledgement of what you've done. So if you are ever looking on an expert who is very passionate about talking about that, Bob Lavinia is definitely one who talks about this all over the country. It's his number one topic when speaking to HR professionals in the government space, particularly, is around employee engagement and recognition. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who's thought, if you've been recognized by your boss, and I mean, it's just a thank you, or something. I mean, this is not an epic thing. No. It's not a gold watch, not a pin. You've just been thanked. Who's not going to go home with a smile on their face for that?
Absolutely.
How is that not
totally
going to be connected to engagement and retention and just a happier, a workplace where other people are happy too, because now you're happy.
Yeah,
kind of
so true.
We get together and the mood, a bad mood will sink into the workforce, but so will a good one. And recognition. And it's just, in my mind, a grossly underutilized tool that we have, and is fundamentally human if we could just get our minds wrapped around it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The simple things we forget.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I received a card one day in the mail and was not expecting it, because handwritten cards, that's a lost art now, right? That does not happen very often. And I thought, I don't recognize that handwriting. So I opened it, and it was from a business partner that I subcontract through from time to time, just thanking me for being such a good vendor partner for them. And it is hanging up on my whiteboard right here, because that's how much it meant to me. Right? That recognition.
Yeah,
I thought
simple.
And we all have one like that, don't we? I have one from a vendor partner, actually, who I had set something up and facilitated and helped them see a problem from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I got a thank you note from them. And it was really sincere and lovely, and I kept it.
Yes.
It's so powerful.
It's true.
I smile about it now.
Yeah.
I have every thank you email I put when I get cards. I have this little pin board, and I just put them up there because that means something to me. You're absolutely right. It's like somebody took the time to put that much effort into saying that to me, and that means something. So I totally agree. It's those simple things, but they touch you so deeply. So
yeah.
Specific recognition too. Thank you for this specific thing, or being this specific. The specificity I think matters too.
Yeah, I am sure, being specific, that's part of recognition best practice. And I'm sure we could drill down and articulate all the recognition best practices. And another one of that would be customizing it for the individual, asking them how they like to be recognized.
Yes.
But following through. Maybe, and I'm not sure why recognition doesn't do well. Maybe it's because it has to be a habit. It really needs to become a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
awesome.
that's very true. Yeah, I think if you're not to your point, if you're not in the habit of doing it and you don't practice it daily, I think it does make a big difference. And when it's sincere and figuring it out, and I know, like I do, definitely take the time to understand how each of my team members like to be recognized, because some of them like big public recognition, right? They want their name up there in lights type of recognition, and then some of them just like that kind of quiet, hey, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, that type of recognition. And I think it's important to understand that as well, because you can sometimes embarrass a person unintentionally by giving them the wrong type of recognition. So if you're not someone who's very comfortable in the public light and we put you up there on stage, that may be really hard for you versus if we just quietly recognize you and that's what you're more comfortable with. So I do think it's important to really get to know people, but that only happens through habit. If you don't take the time to do that on a frequent basis and you don't learn those things and you don't apply them. So
yeah, for sure. And then, but again, I'll just circle back to that one point I made at the beginning. Don't let fear of doing it wrong stop you from doing it at all.
Yes.
100% agree.
Love that.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's
it's
really
not
good
perfection.
Advice.
It's the heart that's behind it, right? The intention again.
Absolutely.
That's behind it.
No, I like that. Yeah, me too. It's good stuff. What else? What are there some other major recurring themes that you're seeing? So we've talked a little bit about recognition. We talked about psychological safety and about trust. What are some of the other key themes that you're seeing out there?
There's the perennial discussion around HR getting more strategic.
Yeah.
We talked about that here too.
Have you guys talked about that on the show yet?
We would love that. We want
your
input on that though, for sure, because that's a very hot topic. Yes.
It's such a hot topic. So I'm not sure that the strategy is a hard thing to pin down. Strategy is so specific to the organization that you're in. So, I've done presentations on small business strategy. That looks very different than the business or the HR strategy for a big business. It just looks so much different. The focus is different. And when you can't create a structure that all of us can, that's really easy to follow, that's easy for anybody to follow, then, well, if you can't, then you're getting strategic at that point. If you're kind of almost this sense of making it up as you go, you're starting probably to get a bit strategic at that point, as long as it's connected, of course, to like the business goals and business strategy. And so at that point, you're getting strategic. And I've tried bringing people on the show to talk about is HR strategy. And I'm kind of getting there with some of them, but none of them have really, it hasn't resonated yet. So I'll just keep working at it. And that's not to, what's the word, like say bad things or criticize the guests that have had this conversation. It's just the complexity of thinking about it. We're trying to build strategy, human strategy. There was so many moving parts and emotions, and there's just so much to it that it's really tricky. And then often we're in these roles where we have to deliver on tactics day in, day out. It's really hard to pull yourself out of those tactics, see the big picture, and start taking HR action in service of the big picture. So that strategy piece, it comes up again and again. But I do think that HR is making progress, and I also think that AI is going to expedite our process, our progress towards the strategic. And so that is maybe another theme is AI. AI is coming. I did an interesting interview with, what was her title? The VP of product for Indeed. And she is responsible for AI. And the way they looked at it, I loved it. It was great. Was this idea of toil. AI is coming for our toil. Isn't that amazing?
I like that.
Yeah, I never doubted that. I am so ready to get rid of the toil.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like the tactical stuff that you're doing every day that take away your time to be more strategic, right? Going back to that.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Gotcha.
Right. No.
That's awesome.
I think AI is the best administrative assistant I've ever had.
Well, yeah. Not everybody finds writing toil, but I mean, I find writing, I can do it, but I do find it's a bit toilful. Okay, I'm overusing the word now, but
Andrea-ism.
There's toil in writing, and so yes, for me, even at that level. But then when you get into a company with specific tools that help reduce the toil, and indeed, environment is toil around recruitment, which there is plenty of toil in recruitment.
Yep, absolutely.
But we can use, I find that the idea of getting rid of toil, a useful lens to look at where we should be focusing our AI effort.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Cyndi and I have talked a little bit about that, is not being afraid of AI, but really embracing it, because exactly to your point is that there is still, at the end of the day, even when we talk about strategic HR, there is still tactical work that has to be done. You still have to get people onboarded and offboarded. You still have to do benefits. All of those things still have to be done. And so, so you can't always be strategic. And so there is that balance between the tactical roles. But if you can embrace AI and use it to take away some of the administrative burden of, some of those things that you can actually utilize it for, that then allows you to give you more opportunity to be more strategic and be more involved and kind of elevate outside of just the day-to-day paper pushing side of HR that still has to be there, because we still have to do it. It's not like that goes away. We still have those functions that we have to do. So,
well, and one of the
other role that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one more thing on that is, Mercer recently said when they were talking about HR's sort of focuses for 2025 that with AI, it has been looked at as an efficiency tool, which is great, and there are going to be opportunities in the future for HR to use it more strategically. I'm really excited about that. And I think everything that we have heard is that, HR is very interested in AI, and that maybe so far AI has not sort of kept up with the interest level as far as maturity goes. So I think the next couple of years is going to be very interesting. Back to what you were saying, Andrea, with regards to AI.
The other point I guess I would just make about AI, because we are going to use AI ourselves as HR practitioners, but we also need to be thinking about the impact that AI is going to have on our workforces. And chart as much as we can the way forward. It isn't that hard for AI to tell you which positions are likely to be, which positions are going to be more or less affected by AI. And when you see that, then you can develop, and that for your own organization, you can develop plans, strategies, whatever you want to call it, for helping that part of your workforce either incorporate it and adjust, or reskill, upskilling.
Yes.
Yeah. Another big theme we're seeing around that is that upskilling, reskilling of the workforce, and the role that HR needs to play.
That was going to be that's also one of the themes. And that starts to get into the future of HR. Is we have to get good at that. I bet there are some places. I haven't talked to anybody about this yet. I'm interested in talking to somebody about that. about the upskilling, reskilling. We just have to get good at that because the pace of change is not slowing down.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
yep.
it's
But only
exciting.
to what it is exciting. It's also, but it's also scary for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that makes a big difference. Yeah, no, it's very true. But it's a really good point. Yeah.
It's going to be exciting for Cyndi because Cyndi likes Cyndi. That's her business.
That's her business. That's right. Change. She knows the only constant is change. So yeah, keep Cyndi busy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's really good.
Well, can I ask a question then, Andrea? So based on all these conversations you've had, do you know how many conversations you've had over the past, over 3 years? How many, podcasts?
Well, I've recorded enough to take me to January. Does that count?
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's over 200. It's over 200
There
now.
you go. Okay, so that's really helpful. So one of the things that we love doing on our podcast is just sort of sharing some gold nuggets with our HR community. And so are there maybe 3 things or 4 things that you could kind of share, even just in general, for us to sort of think about as we're growing and evolving in HR? What are some things that you would guide people on or recommend that we consider?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many. I go like every interview just about it. There's always one or more moments of, oh, that was awesome.
That was so
you
good.
guys totally.
Yeah.
I bet you guys have that experience all the time.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So it would be hard. There have certainly been some sort of like my mind is blown moments. But at a career level, best, same old kind of thing. Keep learning.
There you go.
Yeah.
Love that.
Be intentional about your learning.
Yeah.
See failure as learning. Seek out learning. Don't turn your learning over to your employer, and because they're not training you, throw your hands up in the air and say, I'm done.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't do that.
Absolutely.
Love that.
You have control over that, and you're giving, and if you do that, and you know what, we're all tempted to do it at times because you get so mired and they've set you on this project that you're poorly skilled to do, and you're mad at them because they haven't equipped you to do it.
But
don't let that stop you.
Take initiative. Let's get in there.
Yeah. I
love
totally
it.
agree. I love that. That's good.
That's wonderful advice.
So keep learning, but learning also has to happen on so many levels. So it has to happen in the HR sphere, which we're all very mindful of, and learning about compensation and learning about performance management, and we learn about all the spheres of HR. But we also have to learn about ourselves along the way.
I like that.
What are our values? What do we like to do? What upsets us? And when you get upset, like how we can't blame that necessarily on other people. What are we being triggered in ourselves? Be self-aware. So learning about yourself, and I was probably the worst for this early in my career. I thought, I am who I am. It's said it's never going to change. I can just ignore that. But my mom is almost 80 now, and she's still learning about herself. First, we are going to keep learning. So keep learning
Forever. Yeah.
But also, if you're interested in leadership, that's another area that you need to keep learning about. So learn about leadership, about what kind of leader you want to be, and take small steps. And this is where I think the 1% better every day is really quite helpful. You're not going to get there today. Probably not going to get there by the end of the career, but by the end of your career, you'll be a heck of a lot closer. Yeah. So keep learning. I think women have a tendency more than men to hold themselves back. Imposter syndrome.
Yes. We just had an episode on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? I haven't yet. I need to.
It's a good topic.
Yeah, it is.
Figure it out.
And tap into your community. Like, listen to Andrea's podcast, the HR Hub.
Yeah.
And hopefully people are getting something out of our conversation today and other episodes, and, podcasts like this, communities that you can belong to, those are other ways to continue to learn and grow and be supported too, right?
Absolutely.
I know.
Andrea, how can people find you? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have one more? So sorry about that.
I also encourage people to get a coach. Oh, I'm like, I could be like, full of advice. I've had coaches on. They are a great resource. Anyways, okay, I'll leave it there.
I agree.
If they want to get a hold of me, my YouTube, follow the YouTube channel. Or listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
They can email me, Andrea at thehrhub.ca. Can go to my website, the HR Hub. They can also, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't be shy.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's great. I love it.
Thank you
We've
so
really
much.
enjoyed having you. Yeah, it's been wonderful to have you on our podcast today. And we look forward to hopefully having you back again. And we'll keep listening to your podcast. I just started since Cyndi introduced it to me. I've been following and listening. And so, great advice, great conversations out there for sure. And you can never have too much. Like, I think that there's all these different perspectives, and it's wonderful because then you can take little nuggets from all these different, experts and even if they're not experts, people who have just lived it and experienced it makes them experts in their own right. So, you can take little nuggets, like you said, from everyone and take something away. So thank you so much. This has been really insightful today.
Thank you, Andrea.
That clothing was amazing. Thank you. And thanks for having me. And
Absolutely. Loved it.
I look forward to supporting your journey.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're excited. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misegadis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Banas, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow and subscribe to our LinkedIn and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.